Okay, good evening, everybody. It's just a couple of minutes past 7, so we will get cracking. There might be a few more students that log in as they kind of sort of Zoom links out and everything, but we'll make a start anyway. If you haven't joined one of our webinars before, welcome. My name is Mark Williams, the founder of Medical Projects, and we've been helping students get places at medical school for the last kind of 5 or 6 years now. And one of the things that we started doing just before or around COVID, and when the whole kind of lockdown thing happened, we started a webinar series which has been super popular, completely free for everybody, and then we upload them to our YouTube channel as well, so you can always kind of find them there. We try and make it topical, and we try and make it kind of short, sharp, and to the point as well, and then give everybody a chance to ask as many questions as they possibly can in the kind of 45-50 minutes that we've got this evening. We don't want to take up too much of your time, so we'll try and get through as much as we can really quickly, give you plenty of time to ask questions, and then if we don't get through all the questions, you can always kind of reach out to us on kind of social media and things as well, or through the YouTube channel, because we answer loads of questions on there as well. Okay, so we're at the stage of the year where a lot of people have started or kind of entered their application, and the next kind of stage for them is the medical school interviews. It's often one of the more stressful times. Obviously, you've got your entrance exams, which are super stressful, and then you've got your actual application, which can be stressful at times, but then the interviews are the next big hurdle that you're going to face. So what we wanted to do was kind of just give you a bit of a heads up of what to expect from interviews. Again, it is a little bit uncertain, and information still coming out about how universities are dealing with COVID and managing online interviews. So we might do another one in a couple of weeks' time when we know more about how universities are conducting them. But yeah, we'll crack on anyway. So just a few housekeeping rules on the next slide. Cool. So we will send a recording of this out, so don't worry if you're trying to make notes. It'll be on our YouTube channel, and we'll send everybody an email about it as well. We will have time for Q&A at the end. If you used the Q&A system on Zoom before, there's an upvote feature. So if somebody else has already asked the question that you would like to ask, you can just hit the thumbs up, and it gives them points and raises that question to the top, so we can answer the most popular questions first. So we'll be using that later on. Okay. At this point, I'd like to welcome Minnie, who is a medical student or 4th-year medical student at Manchester University. Hello.
Hi, everyone.
How are you doing?
Hi.
So you're 4th year at Manchester at the moment. Are you currently on a GP rotation at the moment? Is that right?
Yeah, on GP at the moment, so down in the countryside. But yeah, it's been really nice, good hands-on with patients and stuff. It's definitely changed with COVID though, really different.
Yeah. So are you still doing a lot of face-to-face consultations, or is it all kind of telephone or video conferencing now?
Yeah, it's still a lot of telephone consultations, but I'm lucky that they've been really good with the students and they've sort of adapted it to us. We've got to see people face-to-face, but yeah, majority still telephone.
Okay, good. Good to hear that you're really enjoying it as well, and actually getting some kind of patient interaction, which is great. But you're here to talk to us about interviews. And was it stressful for you at the time?
Yeah, but I think it's also exciting. It's like that final hurdle, isn't it? That you've got the application done, and this is the last bit you need to get in. So I think it's like exciting times as well, and I think it suits some people as well. Some people sort of like the communication, sort of chatting aspects of it. So can be scary, but it's also exciting and good fun sometimes. Okay.
Well, I know you've prepared some slides, so I'll let you kind of hand over to you so I can get my words out. And then I'll kind of jump in if any students have questions and things. I'll jump in and ask those for the students.
Cool. Let's go. So yeah, we're chatting about interviews today, and so just start off with, because I know some people might still be in year 12 and might not be super aware of how the application process goes. So I thought I'd go through what the 2 main types of interviews are to start off with. So MMI, multiple and mini interviews, this is what the majority of medical schools are using at the moment. So there's only a handful that use the panel ones at the moment. So these are sort of small stations, 5 to 10 minutes each, and you rotate around, all of them testing different skills and different qualities as a person. So as you can see in that photo, this is what it used to be like when it was in person. You'd stand outside the door, wait for a buzzer to go off, head in, you'd get a scenario or a briefing, and then it's, you know, just go and talk for 5-10 minutes or however long it is. So yeah, it's quite stressful environment, but it's quite nice in that 5 minutes, do what you can. If it doesn't go so well, you've got however many more stations to make up for it. So yeah, and examples of type of stations you can get, so typical interview questions. So why medicine? What's your work experience like? Talk me through that. And then you've got so these interesting stations, so situational judgment, sort of like you'd get on your UCAT and that end section, and ethics as well. So sort of what would you do if you were in this scenario, and testing those 4 pillars, which I'll talk about later. And then actors as well, which is something I wasn't aware of when I first did my interview. I had not really read up enough, and then suddenly it was like, here's so and so, and you've got to tell them this, and I just had no idea. So yeah, be prepared to sort of, you know, get your acting boots on and just get stuck in with some simulated scenarios. And then you've got your panel traditional interviews. So you're sort of sat at a table with maybe a few of the lecturers or doctors, or maybe even medical students. And it's a bit more question focused, and you'll be basically a bit more thorough, and they can last around 30 minutes. So you get a bit longer to answer your questions and go into a bit more depth, but you don't sort of get that, you know, broken up, moving on to the next thing that you get in MMI. So maybe it's worth thinking about when you're applying which type of interview you prefer, but both have pros and cons. And as I said, the majority are now MMI. So what are they looking for? So first of all, I thought good communicator. The job of a doctor, you're spending 90% of your time around people, around patients, around other doctors, nurses, healthcare assistants. They want to know that you can work in a team, that you can communicate effectively. You're going to have to be, you know, telling patients bad news. You're going to be explaining really complex medical things in a simple way. So they want to know that you can do that, and that you can, you know, work on those conditions. So that's a really important thing to get across, whether it's with an actor and being, you know, really talkative with them, showing empathy, and then maybe demonstrating that in those question stations through chatting about your work experience and things that you've done to demonstrate that as well in your own time. Can work under pressure. Medicine's it's not an easy job. It's very stressful. It's not an easy degree either. It's a lot of work. You're going to spend a lot of time studying. As you can see here, the guy with the books. I mean, that's not always an accurate representation, but it can be. And they want to know that you can deal with that pressure, and you know, you can get through it, because, you know, they don't want you all dropping out. So just being calm in these situations in interview, taking it one step at a time, as I'll go through later, and just not panicking. It's really hard to say, but taking a breather. If you don't know, take a step back, think out loud. That's something they love to see. Commitment as well. It's a long degree, 5-6 years, and then you've got another 10 years of training before you make it to a consultant level. So that's a long time, and they want to know that you're going to stick with it. So there's loads of ways that you can show this through work experience, things like that. Maybe you play a sport and you've stuck with it for a long time. Just chatting about things like that, and just, yeah, write down some bullet points of things that you can maybe show that you've done that can demonstrate your commitment to medicine, and the fact that you've stuck with it for a long time. Resilience as well, as I was saying, is tough. Have you got any examples of anything that you've been through that, you know, you've come out the other side, you've learned from it, And just yeah, thinking about how you can reflect on difficult situations you've been through, and see if you can talk about that in your interview as well. Knowledge of what the career involves. They want to know that you've got a realistic picture of what medicine's like. It's not Grey's Anatomy. You're not running around saving lives 24/7. It's hard work. There's tough times. I mean, it's amazing, but they want to know that you've had, you know, a first-hand look at what it's like, whether it's through work experience, whether it's through doing volunteering. You've not just seen it on TV and think, yeah, that's what I want to do. It's, you know, having realistic picture and getting that across. There's amazing things about medicine, but there's also tough times as well. And interested in the subject, I put a little diagram here of like one of the slides that we'd maybe get at uni. So if that interests you, then great. Like, make sure you've maybe got some reading, you've done some read some books, done some wider reading that you can maybe talk about as well. And yeah, just demonstrate that you've got interest past, you know, being a doctor for being a doctor's sake and the money. They want to know that you want to read about the subject and learn and, you know, get in-depth knowledge about the subject. So yeah, wider reading is always good. So why medicine? This is pretty much always asked. And my best advice would just be practice, practice, practice. You can't practice this question enough. And whether it's by yourself, with your parents, with a teacher, with friends, just keep verbalizing it, because it's really hard. You can always think about it. I know the reasons why I want to do medicine, but verbalizing that and getting it across in a succinct and effective way, it's really difficult. So maybe start off, try maybe filming yourself or recording yourself on your phone, listening back. Sometimes you'll think, oh my gosh, what am I saying? And then you'll know where to improve and where to go from there. Make a bullet point list of what reasons you want to do medicine. Have you had any amazing experiences while you've been volunteering or doing your work experience? Has anything really inspired you? And use your personal statement as well. Like you've poured blood, sweat, and tears into that piece of writing. There's got to be some things in there that you can use as well to get across really why you want to do it. And yeah, as I said, link it to your work experience or anything that you've done that's really sort of driven you down this path. And be honest with yourself as well. Because I'm guilty of this, going and looking on the internet, what have other people said, what's like the best answer. Just write down what you think first. Don't even get swayed by anything like that, because once you've read something, you're like, oh, okay, I like the sound of that, I'll maybe add that in. But just be really honest with yourself. Why do you want to do it? It might even be like, you know, you were a patient when you were younger and you were treated really well. That's a really personal experience that they want to hear about. So yeah, really recommend doing that. And just knowing what the career involves as well. As I was saying, medicine's not always glamorous. So sort of knowing about the day-to-day and the training and sort of why it suits you as a person and why you want to do it as opposed to any other job, which is when I get onto the next thing, is they always ask is sort of why not nursing? Why not healthcare researcher? Prepare for those questions as well. And those are really tough questions. So be ready for those, because they can throw you off if you just prepare for the why medicine and have a really great answer. And then it's like, well, all those reasons ally themselves with nursing as well. So have a think. Maybe it's the leadership aspect of doing medicine. You're like in charge of a team. Maybe you're interested in surgery and want really hands-on, you know, get to know the real nitty-gritty anatomy of the body. Maybe that's something you're interested in. So yeah, have a think about those reasons as well. And hot topics is really important, because I think this is what throws off a lot of people as well, is they'll be asked to talk about something interesting in the news and they'll have no idea. They'll know their answer to the why medicine question and they'll have the work experience done, but this sort of wider reading, sometimes a lot of people haven't done it. So it's always good to be aware of what's going on in the news, because you never know, they might ask you, and even if they don't, if you can bring it up, it shows that you're really keen and interested. So even if it's just leading up to interview day the week before, just being aware of what's going on. I remember being in the hotel the night before one of my interviews, and just reading anything and everything that was on like BBC Health, and just reading a few scientific articles about things that I was interested in that I could maybe bring up. So yeah, even if it's like, oh, you're interested in stem cells, you can go look those up, read up on that, and be able to talk about that. So I gave some examples here that you might want to have a look at. So obviously COVID-19 is the big topic at the moment. So like elective surgeries in the Northwest have just been cancelled. So I mean, have a think about what the long-term impact of that might be on sort of waiting lists in the future. Lots of people getting more ill, and lots of people being sort of, you know, at that end of the spectrum where they really need care rather than having them diagnosed and treated early. Delayed diagnoses, people aren't going to the GP, they're only being given telephone consultations, so things are being missed. The PPE as well, that's a really important thing that's been going on at the moment. And yeah, as I was saying, telephone consultations, how has that changed the way the NHS is run? Maybe have a look at that. Brexit as well, that's an important thing that's going on at the moment, and you know, lots of talk about the NHS, how will that be involved, especially, you know, with the US election going on. Yeah, maybe have a look at that as well. And then these three down here, these aren't super recent, but they're really interesting reads actually. And so Dr. Baugarber was basically sacked for making a mistake. And there was a big, massive blame game that happened, who was at fault, and she ended up getting reinstated. But it's quite an interesting case, and it's always brought up at medical school. So if you know that and can bring that up, then it's really good. And then Stafford Hospital and all the Hay scandals, really interesting. Even if you have a little browse on Wikipedia and sort of are aware of them, know about them, then yeah, that's really impressive if you can chat about those. Situational judgment and ethics. Now, these are really difficult stations. So here are a couple of examples that I had in mind. So you're working as a healthcare assistant in a nursing home. While tidying, you knock over a patient's vase. What do you do next? And they gave you a set of options. Like, do you just brush it under the bed and don't tell anyone? Do you tell the patient whose vase it is? And then it turned out the vase was from their husband who just passed away, and it all sort of escalated and you had to keep giving answers. So, but it's just being calm in those situations, having a think. Even if you're verbalizing what's not a good idea, then that's always good. Like, I'm not going to lie, say that, you know, I'm not just going to brush it under there because that's, you know, just ethically wrong, morally wrong. And then, yeah, that gives you time to think about what you then would do next. And then the ethical scenarios, this is one I had. You had 8 patients waiting for a transplant. You only have one organ. Who do you give it to? And then you have like your 80-year-old lady, your 2-year-old child, a 40-year-old, you know, man in prison. All these options that are all, you know, viable options. And sometimes there's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. It's being able to get your thoughts across in a succinct way, and yeah, just communicating well, really. So maybe have a look at ethical problems like that, things like the trolley problem, and how other people have tackled it and how maybe you'll tackle it different. I remember, I think I said in mine that I'd roll a dice. I'd have an 8-sided dice or 9-sided dice and just roll it because it's not my decision. And they thought that that was quite creative. And then they just said, no, actually, you have to make a decision. I got a bit thrown off by that. I was ready to just leave it there. But yeah, so maybe try some of those yourself at home and see how you deal with it. And yeah, as I was saying, verbalize all your thoughts, even if it's, I wouldn't do this. That's still something better than you sitting there in silence, thinking. And yeah, be ready to justify your answer as well, being able to explain that and give your thoughts. I put GMC, good medical practice as well. That's something that's really useful to read beforehand, especially when it comes to these situational judgment things. It's basically a big document of how a doctor should act and what they should do. And a lot of the education that we get in medical school is sort of based around this. So if you read that, it probably it would help a lot with these sort of situations and helping you decide what you should do. And then revising those UCAT questions again, the SJT, you'll get questions similar to that. Have a look, maybe you bought a textbook for your UCAT, and have a look at how the answers are explained, and then maybe you can use those as well. And then having a look at the 4 pillars of medical ethics. So, oh, sorry, Mark, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, so you've mentioned the kind of the GMC link or the document there. What I'll do, I'll paste that link into the chat so everybody can actually access that, just to save them kind of Googling. That's the actual link. Go away and read that, or make a note of it at least. Go away and read in the next couple.
Yeah, it's really useful, really useful. So 4 pillars of medical ethics, so autonomy, justice, beneficence, and then non-malignant. So having a look at those, really useful in sort of guiding your answers. And yeah, they'll be really impressed if you know that as well. I think we've got some articles, or maybe we'll be having some articles out on those on medical projects. So keep an eye out, because yeah, they'll be really impressed if you know that, and it's a really good way of framing your answers.
Yeah, I'll show everybody the towards the end, maybe just after the Q&A, I'll bring up the webinar section, and I'll also show everybody where the articles are on the actual website, because we have a few based around interview stuff, so that'll be useful. And I'll show everybody, I'll share my screen later.
Yeah, for sure. And data interpretation, this one's, if it goes well and you sort of know what you're doing, then great, but it really can throw you off if suddenly you're given a graph and you're like, oh my gosh, what is this? So I've given like a brief structure of maybe how you can think about it to save you panicking, because I'm like that. I would just want to go straight to the answer, and they really want to see you talking and thinking through the problem and trying to solve it. So just start with the basics. Read the title. What is the graph about? What's it telling me? Have a look at the axes. What are they comparing? And what are the units of measurement as well? That's always really important, just to keep an eye on. State the obvious. What can you see? Is it trending upwards? Is it trending downwards? Is it sort of a elliptical shape? And are there any patterns? Do the things have? Do the variables have anything in common? Are they following the same trend if you're comparing two things? And then interpreting that as well, what do these patterns show? And can you think of anything else that might, be outside, beyond the graph, that might be affecting these results? So you always have that problem about, the number of ice creams sold and the number of shark attacks having a positive correlation. But you've got to think the factor is probably it's sunnier, people are going to the beach, therefore more people buying ice cream, and therefore, so having a think about what else can be, interpreted from that, and what else can be affecting the data. So here's an example I have here of, this is an oral glucose tolerance test. So basically, a patient will be fasting, won't have eaten anything, and they'll be given a dose of sugar, really, be given a glass of 7-Up, and then they see what their blood sugar does. So as you can see, you look at the X and Y axis, time versus level of glucose, and then you can see as time goes on, you've got a sharp spike in blood glucose, more so in the patient with diabetes, and just pointing out stuff like that. Oh, you can see a sharper spike here, and the peak is way higher for a patient with diabetes, but they both follow the same sort of pattern, and just pointing stuff out like that. And then what can you get from that? That patient with diabetes has a higher baseline level of blood sugar, the peak is higher in diabetes, so they have less control over their blood sugar. There's things like that. So hopefully that makes sense, and that's like a little structure that you can use, and just think about the basics from the start. Don't get overwhelmed by it. Just go step by step. And then role playing, as I was saying before, this is something that I just turned up to an interview and just did not expect. So scenarios can be made quite difficult. I was lucky with mine that I had things like I had to pack a bag for an old lady who was going on a day out from a nursing home. She really wanted to take this massive wad of cash with her, and I had to tell her she can't take it. She wanted to take a photo of a dead husband with her, and I was like, probably shouldn't take that. And it's just like difficult things to deal with. But if you get stuck in, and just get ready to sort of act as well, and because they don't want you to sort of step back and like, oh, I don't want to do this. Just communicate with them as you would a normal person, really. Like, I know some people in the stations opposite had to dress a baby, put a nappy on a baby. I don't think anyone of them had ever done that. So it's situations that you probably haven't gone through, but they just want to see how you handle that pressure. And so just thinking out loud again, they just want to see you're not sat there doing nothing. You're trying to work through that. I had to tell a man how to get the bus to Glenrothes with a bus timetable. And I use Google. Everyone uses Google Maps nowadays. I would never read a bus timetable. And I don't think I did read the bus timetable during that time. I just had a nice chat with him and asked him where he was going and why he was going there, and had a chat. He was going for a birthday party or something. So I think they just want to see that you're a normal person who can chat with complete strangers, just like a doctor would. So don't worry about completely solving the task or getting through the scenario. Just focus on the person that's with you, interacting with them. If it's a station where they're sort of a patient, getting to know their thoughts and feelings, and asking them questions as well, because it's all about empathy. Some stations you might get something like Breaking Bad News, where you have to tell them maybe they've been given the wrong dose of a medication. So it's not just blasting information at them. Ask them questions as well and see what feedback you can get. But yeah, big advice: just get stuck in. Just don't be worried about embarrassing yourself, because I think everyone gets embarrassed in these stations. Just get stuck in. So some top tips that I made as well. So is your setup Zoom and Teams ready? Make sure the lighting's good, that they can see you, that your microphone's fine. You're not going to be disturbed. Tell your family or whoever's in not to bother you during these hours. It sounds like really obvious things, but I think on interview day, you don't want to be worrying about all of that. You just want to sit there and do it. So have it all ready, really. And yeah, be sat on ready to go as soon as your interview time is. I know about the course in university. I mean, I wasn't caught out by this, but I know a lot of friends were, that they were asked about the general area that the university was in. Someone interviewed at Cardiff and was asked about the demographics of patients in the valleys, and just had no clue. So things like that you can get caught out on, but just knowing the general course structure, how it's taught, what are the strengths of the university, where is it? So yeah, having a look at that as well. Try filming yourself watching it back. You'll be surprised at how differently you perceive yourself when you're watching yourself back than when you're actually doing it. And you can pick up loads of tips. You'll be like, oh no, why did I say that? And it's something you wouldn't think about unless you watched it back. Or getting your friends or family to film you and they can ask you questions. It can be really helpful. And yeah, practice with anyone you can. Get teachers to do it. I know I did. I was bad during mine. Like, please, can you just go through some data interpretation with me? And they'd print out a graph that I'd never seen before, and they'd talk and I had to talk through it, and just like this previous slide. And then yeah, read the news. BBC Health's always really good, and then obviously medical projects articles, which Mark will link afterwards. There's some hot topics and things like that on there, and also don't need to be an expert in medicine. Don't worry about knowing first year things ahead of time. They just want to know you're interested. Are you reading the news? Are you reading around the subjects? Have you read any interesting books allied with medicine? They're not going to ask you any scientific questions, really. And even if it's an Oxbridge interview, it won't be beyond your level of expertise at A level. You may have to work things out and sort of push yourself to problem solve, but they're not going to be asking you about the pathophysiology of, diabetes. And And yeah, know your personal statement as well. Some universities will use this as a station. And also it's just really useful because you've written it, you've put effort into that. You've got things that you obviously want to show the university. So why not, use it again in the interview? And then write down some key reflections from your work experience. So what did you actually get out of it? What are things you learned? Universities love reflection. And they want to see that you're sort of growing and improving from everything that you do. So, I mean, even if it's, volunteering in a charity shop, what did you learn from that, and how would that make you a good medical student, a good doctor? And then most of all, enjoy it. It's exciting. It's the last step. You're so close. And just, get stuck in, be ready to be chatty, just be talkative, just be yourselves, really. And enjoy it, because it's fun time. Scary but fun.
Yeah, you say it's fun, but I'm sure most people will be really nervous at the time. It's probably fun once you're in and you can reflect on that, knowing that you've got a place. But I'm sure for the students watching who are like, oh my God, I need to get this right. It might not be fun, but do enjoy it as well. And if you're relaxed, you're going to be much more comfortable. You can think much more clearly when you're relaxed. As soon as you get stressed and you're under pressure, that's when mistakes happen, and you panic and you lose your train of thought. Being relaxed and just having a conversation with people makes things so much easier. One of the things that we kind of always teach on our course is have a really good introduction, because it gets that hurdle of introducing yourself out of the way. It comes across very professional as well, but it just settles you down. You don't have to think about the first thing you're going to say. It's like, hi, my name's Mark, I'm here for this interview today. How are you? And just that one little bit of that one sentence in every MMI station you go to will just relax everything down, slow everything down a little bit. But yeah, really good advice. I'm just going to put a link to because you mentioned the BBC News Health. I'm going to put a link in the chat so everybody's got that as well. We always recommend that people sign up for the notifications from BBC Health as well. It takes 5 minutes every day just to check your emails and read the latest article on BBC News. Really easy to do, but keeps you up to date with things. And then if you find something that's interesting, go away and read a bit more, but don't do more than that 5 minutes. Just kind of take that 5 minutes every day. That's better than trying to cram 4 hours worth of, I need to catch up on the news a week before your interview, because it's just not going to go in. But that 5 minutes every day will change your kind of perception of the news. And just a quick thing as well, about the articles. Can I share my screen? I'll see if I can.
Oh yeah, shall I stop sharing mine
for the articles as well? I'll just literally show everybody where it is on the actual website. So menu at the top, application support. If you go to articles, which is this page, but we literally have articles written by medical students who have been through this process, and they're amazing writers as well. So yeah, this is one of those kind of questions that is so likely to come up at interview. Just have a read of that, take 5 minutes to read that one day. Or this introduction to medical ethics, again, it's 5 minutes to read, but it will really help. Ventilators in their role during COVID, another great, potential question that's going to come up. And there's things like book reviews on there as well. Just take a read. I think they're great articles. And then obviously everybody that's watching this as well, a few people always ask, can I watch this? Is it being recorded? So we literally put all the webinars on this section here, which is the past webinars, when it loads.
It's always so slow when you're on Zoom at the same time, isn't it?
I know, yeah. The website's normally faster than this.
Yeah.
It must be because we're streaming at the same time. Oh my God, it's literally never been this slow before ever. If there's any like students on the
Try
site at the
Safari,
same
it's
time as
faster.
well. Was that a comment?
Yeah.
Oh God.
Or not his Google Chrome slander.
Anyway, when there's not 150 students trying to access that page and we're like live on Zoom, it does work. Oh, there we go. Password bananas. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So we put all of the slides and the videos on there as well. So yeah, people can find it on there. Cool. Okay. So I guess at this point, I'll let you share the Q&A slide, and I'll bring up the Q&A. And at this point as well, we'll bring in Aaliyah as well, because as a bonus, we wanted more opinions and more experience. Hiya.
Hi everyone.
Hi. So again, you're fourth year medical student at Manchester, aren't you?
Yeah.
Cool. So essentially you're here to just add an extra layer of perspective and an extra layer of experiences and sharing your experience with some of the questions that students have as well. So really appreciate you coming along and helping out with that as well.
Yeah, no
So
worries.
I'm going to open up the Q&A box. So I don't know who wants to tackle this one. It is a biggie. I know you touched on this in there, Minnie, but how do you go about answering the why do you want to become a doctor and not a nurse question? I know you touched on it briefly, but can you kind of expand around that question in particular?
Yeah, I think, what did I said in mine, I think that I was really interested in the science aspect of medicine as well. I wanted to know sort of everything about how the body works and know the reasons behind why people get these diseases. And I was really interested in the sort of the process of that, as opposed to sort of the hands-on sort of practical role that a nurse has. And I think I said about leadership as well. The doctor's sort of, in charge of that team, especially like if you're in theatre, the consultant surgeon's gonna take charge, and I sort of really enjoy that role. So it's just thinking about qualities that you have as well. Maybe you can add those in there that you think link to being a doctor. I don't know about you, Aaliyah, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree, because I had the same question in my interviews and I expressed about the leadership aspect. So like that I had good leadership skills, and like just bringing in what skills and where I'd learnt them from that were specific to being a doctor rather than a nurse. And yeah, definitely about the knowledge as well, because if it's that you're interested in, you won't learn it in much depth if you do nursing. So I'd say they're definitely two big points to answer that question with.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we always just mention as well is not to kind of insult any of the other roles as well. But yeah, great advice. Hopefully that helps some of the students out there. Okay, so the next one is, what type of questions should we ask during/after the interview that will make an impression?
Ooh. See, wait, because I had this thing where if it was outside of the station, it didn't count towards your interview. So I remember someone saying to me, because we finished the station a bit early, had 2 minutes, they were like, right, we'll just have a chat now. Nothing you say will count towards or against your interview. So I don't think necessarily asking questions will determine whether or not, you make a good impression. I think it would just be mostly concentrated on what actually happens, in the station or in that panel interview. So I think just asking what you need to know, really, that's what I would say. I don't know about you.
Yeah, personally, I just asked what I needed to know. I didn't ask anything to help my interview process, as in me getting a better mark in the interview at all. Just asking anything like where I was going for the next station, if I was like confused about that. But nothing really like that I thought would help in terms of my actual interview. I just focus on the actual station and just doing what they'd asked me to do in that.
Yeah, because a lot of times they have a tick sheet or mark sheet, and it will literally just be the interview station, and asking a question won't be like marks or against you. So yeah, just ask away anything you need to know if you've got time. So it's not going to impact you in any way, I don't think.
And you touched on this a little bit, but someone's asked, what do you do if you can't answer a question in an interview? I mean, in those moments of panic, your mind can go blank. Is there a kind of a strategy that you had just to kind of get yourself back in and refocus and kind of calm down a bit?
I think just saying what you're thinking. I mean, say you've been given a problem, it's just, you don't need to come up with the answer straight away. Just sort of talking through it and just verbalizing anything that really comes to your head. I know that sounds really stupid, but even just, saying, oh, that bit's really difficult. So I'm just thinking about how that fits together, and just, getting across your thought process and saying what you're actually doing, while you're working it out.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree. Generally, most stations or panels, they don't expect you to come up with an answer or the right answer. It's more so them listening to and you showing that you've got some logical way of thinking, and your process of thinking is going through steps, ruling things out, and just explaining why you're thinking something or you're ruling something out, rather than just rushing straight into the answer. And if you don't have an answer, even if you can't think of anything to say at all, if worse comes to worse, if you need, 30 seconds, because the interviews aren't that long, but if you need a little bit just to think, just say, I'm just going to have a little think about that. I don't know much about that topic. But yeah, definitely think speaking your thoughts, I would say, is the best.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree. So this is a fun question. Can you give an example of an interview question you had, preferably a hard one? So I guess that could be rephrased in what was the hardest question that you had at interview?
That's really hard, so long ago now.
Yeah. Trying to think. I had one on ethics. It was about female fertility and IVF. So should all females have IVF available to them? And then it was like, what about a female who's going to smoke during their pregnancy? I thought that was, I think, one of the most difficult ones. It was a while ago now, so I'm trying to think of any others.
Yeah, I think the ethical ones do tend to be the ones that sort of throw you off the most. So yeah, just having a read up beforehand about maybe some ethical issues that come up. So things like IVF, abortion, anything that, like transplant as well. They've changed like opt-in, opt-out schemes, haven't they? So I think those ones tend to be the ones that catch people out the most.
Yeah, I think a lot of the preparation that we do around ethics is kind of group ethical discussions, because you can start to understand different people's opinions and build up your kind of resilience for ethics and arguing and talking about ethical cases. So we always do ethical scenarios on our courses. So yeah, maybe just try and get a few people together and do a Zoom call and just say, like, here's an ethical scenario. Let's split into two groups and do like a for and against, just to kind of get into that role of answering ethical questions. Could be something that people could do. Just looking down the questions now. So this isn't kind of technically interview based, but I'll ask it anyway because it does have quite a lot of votes. What sort of extracurriculars do they like you to have?
I think they'd be happy. It sounds so wishy-washy, but I think anything that you can link to how it makes you a better medical student or a better doctor, I think would be fine. So I play a lot of tennis. I brought that up. I was sort of team captain. I, showed leadership skills. I communicated with team members to, help the team win. Did some coaching. So I've been, communicated with, peers that were above me and younger than me as well. And then, yeah, I suppose academic ones as well. I suppose if you're applying to Oxbridge, they probably care more about the academic side of it. So if you're part of maybe like a book club or something, or I think anything where you can show that you're interested in the subjects, or that you can show those personal qualities, like, the resilience and so sports a really good one, I think, as well.
Yeah, I would say make sure you just have a good range of extracurriculars rather than like all sport or all academic. Just make sure there's a good mix of them, because they usually ask like, oh, how would you balance your extracurriculars with being academic? So it's maybe using it like I always used to say that, the sport that I play helps me to relax. So I would use that as my calming therapy if I've had a stressful day, for example, or like reading a book. So just make sure you've got a good mix, and just make sure you know what skill you gain from doing that. So if they ask you how is that useful to you and how is that useful to you being a doctor, then just have an answer just ready for that, really. But anything, you can get an answer for anything, really, can't you?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think anything you do, you need to be able to, they're asking you for a reason, and that reason is, how is it going to make you a better medical student, or how is it going to make you a good doctor? So anything that you talk about in your personal statement or in interviews, when it comes to extracurricular, it's about how you can turn that back into a positive of, my communication skills have been developed, which is going to be great when I get to speak to patients and things like that. So always have a link back to medical school or being a doctor in some way. Some questions that could come up about COVID. Well, like, how long's a piece of string, I guess.
Yeah. I think maybe have a look at that site. So I think that might ask you about what you think the long-term impact of the NHS might be, because that's something that I think about at the moment. Like, a lot of cancer diagnoses are being missed. Lockdown as well. What are the pros and cons of lockdown? Potentially, it's having a positive impact in terms of the spread, but then you've also got the cons of mental health crises as well. So I think just having a read about COVID in general and picking out different issues that you can see, and what are people doing, like what's Boris Johnson doing, and why has he decided on that, and what are the pros and cons and things like that. So just having a general read over and just being ready to sort of answer it and discuss your ideas.
And I think actually it might be nice if they ask you about COVID, because it's the only thing that everyone's talking about at the moment. So it can't be a question that they ask you and you'll be like, oh, I know nothing about COVID. You'll have something to say, and it's all over the news. So if you've been watching the news, then you should have some idea of something to give to that question and build from that, really.
Yeah, definitely. It's everywhere. You can't not have some kind of awareness of it. And I do think that a lot of COVID type questions will come up this year as well, for obvious reasons. The next question here is, what's the best way to prepare for an interview? I guess there's kind of long-term and short-term. Long-term is some of the things that we spoke about before in terms of, being prepared, make sure that you've practiced questions, make sure that you've recorded yourself and kind of done a lot of kind of self-reflection on how you act under pressure as well. But more for the short-term side of things, that day before or the morning of, have you got any advice for that?
Eat lots, like make sure you're fueled up, and have drank water, and so you feel like your best, really, and you've got energy, and make sure everything's set up beforehand, so it's all pretty much online. So make sure your laptop's charged, you've got the camera ready and working, and all that lighting, and the headphones set up. And just, making the environment as calm as possible as well, whether that's like you want to chat to people and having your parents about to maybe relax you, because I found that I really enjoyed sort of chatting to people beforehand. That calmed my nerves, but I know a lot of people would rather just sit in a dark room and just calm themselves down. So it's just creating an environment that you're comfortable with, and then doing that reading the night before maybe, and just making sure like it's in your head.
Yeah, I'd also say like making sure you get good night's sleeps a few nights before, not just the night before, just to make sure you've got that reserve of energy. and don't stay up the night before, like till 2 a.m. in the morning trying to read every medical article possible. Like you know you have prepared in advance, so there's nothing more you're going to gain by doing those extra 4 hours, especially if you're going to be tired the next day. None of that will come out in the interview. And yeah, I would agree with Minnie. Make sure you're fueled up, because there's nothing worse than an interview when you're hungry, because that's just like the first thing at the front of your mind. You're just worrying about that.
To go to the bathroom as well.
Yeah, and make sure you've got like good spare water with you as well. Like, fine, have a little drink in between questions.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Cool. So Lucy's asked, do they ask much about the scientific side of medicine, e.g. kind of A-level chemistry and biology? Are they going to kind of grill you on what your A-level knowledge is?
They didn't for me. Mine was very sort of interaction, like personal communication skills based. And I think obviously like there's few people that didn't even take biology. I think chemistry is the only sort of compulsory one. So I think, they know that people are at different levels, and then especially I was in Scotland as well. So the people that took A levels were a different level than people who did Scottish hires. So I don't think they rely too much on that. I think they just want to see your personal skills, really. And I think even Oxbridge type interviews, it won't be anything beyond that. It will mostly be sort of problem solving things that you can work out in your head, really.
Yeah, I'd say pretty much the same. I would say Oxbridge is a little bit more scientific than other universities, just from own experience. But they don't expect you to know any more than what you've learned. Maybe GCSE level, really, not specific A level. And any like scientific question they do ask you, it's more that concept what we were saying before about logical thinking rather than getting to the right answer. They don't want an answer, they just want to know what you think could be like possible with that question.
Yeah, they're not there to test you on your biology knowledge or your knowledge of anatomy. You study that and you pass exams for that. They're much more interested in kind of how you react under pressure and how you communicate and what type of medical student you're going to be. So I wouldn't panic about brushing up on your latest biology before interviews. There's better things you can focus on, I think. So I'm just aware of the time. Like obviously we're nearly coming up to an hour, and I never want to take more than an hour of everybody's evening. So I'll take maybe a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap it up. If we don't get through everybody's questions, like I said, people can reach us on social media as well. So this one is, how much notice do universities normally give you before your interview date?
I think it was a while. Definitely enough to organise, travel, or I suppose you don't even need to travel now. But it was ample notice, I remember it being. I don't know about you, Aaliyah.
I think the least time that I got was a week, but I think that was later on, like when I had an interview in like March, for example. But I wouldn't say like if people have interviews before you, like they've got it 2 weeks, you might get it 1 week. So don't base it off other people. But the latest I got was a week. So.
Yeah, it varies, but you can always check the interview kind of time of year. I know it might be affected due to COVID this year, but most universities tend to interview around the same months. So if you've already applied for and you picked your 4 medical schools, you can go away and have a look at the normal time that they interview. Some can be like December, January, but then others can be March, but they're always March. So you can kind of predict when that interview might pop up. So that'll just give you a little bit of a heads up, even if you haven't heard from them yet. Okay, I'll try and find one more. Let's have a quick look. I'll scroll down a little bit to try and find one more further down. Bit of a tricky one. Yeah, kind of. Okay, we'll leave this as the last question, but if you're under a lot of pressure, what is your kind of strategy? Because this is interview and life pressure anyway, but what's your kind of go-to strategy to deal with the pressure?
think it depends on the station. Oh, sorry, you go.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, it's just like normal, I guess it's generic things that people say, but they work for me. Is like making sure I'm breathing calmly, like big breaths rather than smaller ones. And if it's something like I'm reading something too quickly, I always know like to just calm down, read it again, read it slowly, like think about what the words actually mean so that like absorb into my head and I know what I'm reading rather than rushing through it. And yeah, just like doing anything to minimize stress beforehand, just like making sure I'm not dehydrated and hungry. But yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, because a lot of my stations are role play. So I, like, as I was talking about the bus timetable thing, I had no idea what I was doing. And I just filled time by asking the actor questions. And I did that with a lot of the other stations as well. Like, if I didn't really know what I was doing, I just tried to sort of build rapport, see how they were feeling, and just have a nice chat with them while I was sort of thinking in the back of my head, okay, how am I going to solve this problem? And yeah, take a breath. Like everyone does it, just have a second to think, and then don't just explode into, because I'm guilty of that, just getting a question and then thinking, oh my God, I've got to just get it out there. Like, just, yeah, take a second, have a think, verbalize your thoughts if you want to. And yeah, take a breather.
Yeah, definitely agree with all those points. I think that's really, really good advice. I'm just really conscious of time, so I'll leave that as the last question. I apologise if we haven't got through all the questions. There's still 143 questions in there that we haven't got through. But feel free to reach out to us on social media. When we upload the video to YouTube, put your questions below those videos on YouTube as well, because we can answer those kind of over the next week or so as well. So that's a good thing. The last slide as well, just to show, just has details of the next webinar. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, thank you very much for watching. The next webinar is 2 weeks away from now. It's already on the website, so feel free to go and register for that as well. Really hope you've enjoyed it, and thank you to Minnie and Aaliyah as well for giving up your evening. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having us, and good luck everyone with your interviews and all the applications and stuff. You'll do great.
Good luck. You'll be fine.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Oh, see everyone later.